Toulson again, a rare miss. Ball on the floor. Up ahead, Jacoby Coles. Grand Canyon for the third straight year are the WAC champions.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Basketball in the Mountains. This is episode 59. I am your host, as always, Tyler King. Our first Friday episode in a couple weeks. Really glad to be back previewing the college hoops weekend. If you missed my episode earlier in the week, kind of a mishmash episode. A lot of NBA talk as well with Nuggets and Suns, but also give some of my thoughts of the weekend that was last weekend in college basketball. Some of the games I got to go to a handful during the week, and then got to see Colorado again on the weekend. So, but looking forward to this upcoming weekend here. Got a couple of games on the docket. None that I will be at. I'm actually going to be helping out at the Denver Broncos playoff game on Saturday here in Mile High City. So looking forward to that. But a lot of great college games on the schedule this weekend. And the one that I am most excited for is Grand Canyon and Utah State in the Mountain West. A lot of good games in the Mountain West this weekend. There's an important one tonight for those of you who are listening on Friday. I'm not going to talk too much about it because it'll be the conversation will be pretty quickly outdated. But Colorado State, important game at Boise State on Friday night, a late one. I think it's an 8:30 tip-off if I remember correctly. Yeah, 8:30 tip-off up in Boise at Extra Mile. So Boise is reeling, lost 4 in a row, and we'll talk about one of those losses to Grand Canyon that they had last week at some point during this podcast. And Colorado State could really use a nice road win. They beat Grand Canyon, ironically, earlier in Mountain West play earlier this month. But since have struggled a little bit. Obviously, they lost in New Mexico last week, beat UNLV, but then earlier this week had a really disappointing effort at Fresno State, a game that usually is one they take care of business. They had won 13 straight times against Fresno, which I found pretty incredible when I went back and looked at it, even though the last couple of years CSU has been a much better basketball program than Fresno State. It's just hard to beat a team that many times in a row, especially when you're playing them, almost twice a year usually. So a rare dud from CSU in Fresno, a bad loss for them, and they could really use it on Friday night, and obviously Boise can as well. But Grand Canyon, Utah State in Phoenix at GCU Arena on Saturday, 12:30 p.m. on Fox Sports 1, a nationally ranked Utah State team, which we talked about the other day. They're up to number 23 in the AP poll. They're back in the AP poll for, I think, a third straight season, obviously back-to-back years under Coach Jared Calhoun. And to help us preview this game and to talk about GCU as a whole is our friend Brennan Williams from Go Lopes Radio. Brendan, how are you doing, my friend?
Good. Yeah. I mean, an exciting weekend we got coming ahead. I try not to be too romantic about this stuff, but I mean, it's really cool for GCU, right? They come to the Mountain West, and we're pretty early on in this conference season here, but you get a ranked opponent, a team coming in with a number next to their name in your place. How about 12:30, middle of the day? FS
should be a lot of eyes on this game, man. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it doesn't really get any better than that. So, I hate to kind of over romanticize right when I come on the pod here, but it's an exciting one. And, if you can't get up for this, I don't know what to tell you. So this should be a really good one this weekend.
That's exactly what we do in this podcast, though, is over romanticize college basketball because we love it, and I love it. I know you do too. Got to start with GCU coming into this game off a loss at New Mexico, their first ever trip to the pit in the Mountain West. It is a tough place to play. New Mexico kind of takes care of business, especially there in the second half, 87-64. I got to see New Mexico in person last week. That's a really good defensive team, and just a team that's really rounding into form overall. They've got a couple freshmen that they're playing. One older freshman, but some actual real freshmen as well that are contributing for the Lobos. What was your takeaway from GCU? Obviously, 87-64 loss, but still 3-2 start to Mountain West play. Like, you got to be happy with what the Lopes have shown so far, even despite a loss the other day in a place that really no one ever goes and wins.
Yeah, it's happened to every team. I think outside of Utah State and San Diego State, they've had the peaks and valleys already, and we're 2 weeks into Mountain West play. So GCU, they've done the whole thing, right? They go to Wyoming, galvanizing win. Let's go. They come back home. Well, Colorado State catches them, a little bit of sleep. Okay, but then they go to Boise in a game that tips at 9:20 p.m. and nobody in Boise was at the game, seemed to care about it. GCU goes in there, gets that win. Things are going great. They take care of San Jose State. So things were optimistic. And I think going into the game, what I tried to explain and convey before the game, I think from a GCU perspective, it's a transition from the WAC, right? We're not going to. I hate to do this right now, right? To your Southern Utah Tech sort of friends that you got that listen to podcasts, right? But you got what, a few hundred people there.
It's a different league. There's no way to get around it. This is a jump up for GCU, but one that we were both excited to see because this program has shown a lot these last couple of years.
Exactly. And so I think there's an adjustment that comes with that. And so there's a few ways, there's a lens you could see it through. I wasn't preparing to say, GC is going to lose, be ready for it. But what I do think is appropriate, what you talked about, you mentioned when you pass it over to me, is winning in the pit it's not like this regular thing, right? So I think I talked about it post game, like, I don't think you leave that game and you go, that's it. Like, what a disaster, what a bad game, like throw everything out, revisit it. It's like, no, guys, not a lot of teams go to the pit and win. Like, this is what happens when you play in a really good college basketball conference. Nothing against the WAC. This is a totally different ball game. And so I don't think there's necessarily a time to panic. Now, there's a lot of things they did pretty poorly. Some things that are going to have to be corrected. I thought New Mexico, when I watched the tape and I was previewing them, I was so impressed. Obviously, they rely on a lot of freshmen, like you said, one of them a 23-year-old, but the togetherness, the job Olin has done already, right? I mean, it's kind of, you hear the joke with Cignetti right now, right? Like, no coach gets to complain about continuity now because of thanks to Cignetti, right? Or I need 2 years to build this thing. Well, you look at what Olin's doing, his team's rolling right now. So, you can't say like we're figuring out rotations, this and that, because Olin, I think the joke was Jeff Grammer said they had one student manager return.
It's an entirely brand new everything in Albuquerque.
Everybody's brand new. And so you don't really get that excuse anymore, right? Like, they were ready to go. Obviously, it's easier to do when you're at home, but I was impressed by the togetherness. I think when you look at the talent, it's, I'm not saying their guys aren't good. They've got a ton of talent, but I think you just see Olin, like, I walked away.
Nothing really jumps off the page to you with their roster.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just so impressed they got to the spots they wanted to, conviction with everything they did. And I walked away really impressed by them. Obviously the Bryce Drew double technical into getting tossed. I thought it was a tough time. They're down 10, they're still connected in the game. So I think it was really tough timing for that. After that, it's a 13-point game, kind of over at that point. But I don't think you can leave like, oh my gosh, what a disaster that was. I think there's a lot of correctable things. I got to find an answer for Jake Hall. They're going to see them again, might see him in the Mountain West tournament. Like, write that down. You got to go to the chalkboard.
He went off against CSU as well in person. He had a really good week.
Smokes. I can't believe it. I mean, he was so impressive. I joked like GCU's got all these older guys, right? Guys in their final year. I'm like, if you just were watching that game, you'd be like, oh yeah, Jake Hall, that guy's probably got like a year 7, like Chad Baker Mazara. I mean, he looks like he's done this a million times before. He didn't even look like he was sweating. So I was really kind of impressed by New Mexico. Lots of, I think, improvement still for GCU, but yeah, I walked away just like, wow, credit to Coach Olin. They never wavered. They seemed confident. They knew what they wanted to do and they got it done. So, and then, to kind of take us to Saturday, it's like, if you're GCU, you can't sit around and mope. Like, Utah State's not going to do that. And so they're going to be ready to go Saturday. You got to protect home court in this conference. I get it. It's a ranked team. But those home games are coveted and you got to take care of business there. So really excited to kind of turn that page and get ready for Saturday.
I was going to say, what do you think GCU can do different offensively or better offensively? Because obviously they really struggled in that game against New Mexico. That's a great defensive team, but Utah State's a good defensive team too. That is kind of the thing I've talked about on this podcast. That is the difference between year 1 and year 2 for Jared Calhoun in Logan. Is last year they were an awesome offensive team like they are this year, but they could not really defend anybody, and that's why you saw them lose a bunch of road games. They lost big in CSU at CSU last year, a game I saw in person. They had some other their difficult losses in Mountain West play. There are very few they had. They were liable to get beat pretty good if you caught them on the right night. But now you look at them in Ken Palm. Obviously, they're top 25 overall in Ken Palm, but 31st in offense or 31st in defense to go with their number 22 ranked offense. So Utah State is not going to be a pushover. And obviously GCU shot only 34% from the field as a team, 26% from three the other day in Albuquerque. It felt like only Jaden Henley and Brian Moore were the guys that were consistently getting stuff going. Obviously Mekhi Williams is the guy that comes off the bench and provides a spark, but he really struggled the other day. Obviously Nana Owosu-Anane had a rough night offensively. Just where do you think this team can quickly improve going into Saturday against the Aggies?
So I would say there's a few things. First, really quick one is just shot selection. I think what you've got right now, we don't need to, name names, specific shots, whatever. I think you got guys taking shots, certain shots that probably shouldn't be taking those. You've got to just kind of just have that conversation. Like the shot selection has to be better. GCU hasn't been a great 3-point shooting team all season. And, they took a ton of them, obviously didn't have a ton of success. So that's kind of the first thing. The second thing, and what I talked about, is GCU does have some talent. They have guys that can pop. You talked about Jaden Henley. Obviously, there were some struggles. He kind of was ready to go, plug and play, and he has.
He's a guy that's played in the Mountain West before. You knew he was going to be up for that game,
And they've got a ton of individual talent, and they've been okay at kind of, hey, tonight's a Jaden Henley night, and then we'll sprinkle in a little bit of Brian Moore Jr. Right? They've been able to do that. The problem that they've had is they have these prolonged stretches. And it happened in the second half. They tied it up at 40. Okay, here comes Brian Moore Jr. He's getting to the rack. Like, okay, here we go. We got a game here. And what happened after that was this, like, when things go south offensively, you're hoping, it's a 2-minute thing. And then you've got a guy who you can go to. I mentioned that with New Mexico, right? Like they knew the shots they wanted to take. They knew if you're this guy, this is the shot we want you to take. We don't want you taking that one. We want the ball in your hands. We want to get the ball here. I think GCU has a problem right now that when this thing goes south, there's not this knowledge of like what they want to do. And I think, it's obviously a lot tougher when you're in the pit, without a doubt, right? I mean, that changes everything. But I just think they find themselves a ton of wasted motion. Who's going to take a shot? Where do we want to go with the ball? And those runs are extended. You try to end those pretty quickly if it's a timeout, whatever that might be. Maybe they rally the guys on a free throw and you kind of calm everyone down. They've had these extended kind of poor runs offensively with a ton of wasted motion, a ton of bad shots. Everybody looks checked out. And outside of that, they weren't awful. But that one little, that was like a 6-7 minute stretch of extended, like bad offensive play. And we've seen that at times this year, right? That's not like shocking, but they've just got to make those short, because college basketball, you're playing good teams. You mentioned, New Mexico top. I know they were right ahead of GCU at that time in defense at that point. So, New Mexico obviously is really good defensively, but
yeah, they're a top 30 team defensively in Ken Palm. Yeah.
Yes, but you still have to have some answers, and I've talked about this, like, not even if it's a close game, where are they going? I'm not sure. But if they just need to say, like, we got to stop the bleeding, I'm not sure. I have no idea. Like, we got to get a bucket here. Where do we go? And I don't know that answer. I don't know if they know that answer. And so I think that's figuring things out as we go here, but also it's mid-January. So how much longer do we need to kind of iron these things out? So not a lot of easy offense in transition, it feels like at times either. Everyone's kind of rolling a little bit slower. So I'm not sure. They've just got to like make those runs, when it goes bad, they've got to just be able to get out of that funk quicker. And it was an extended one at the pit that cost them. And that's it. The game's over. This is Mountain West play. I mentioned this in my preview pod with Utah State. Utah State doesn't even need 4 minutes. I mean, they might need 2 minutes and the game's over. Like if you check out for 2 to 3 minutes, that's you mentioned the offense and the defense with them. That's a 13-0 run in 2 minutes. Like, whoa, what the heck just happened? And the ball game's over. You're not coming back from that against good teams. So they're going to have to be ready to go. You got to play 40 full minutes, and you've got to be able to stop those runs when they're happening. So I don't know who that guy is. I think they're figuring it out, but someone's got to do it. We're mid-January here, so someone's got to step up. So we'll see.
I wanted to get your take on the front court situation for GCU, because obviously they've got a lot of talent there. Like you've
Yep.
talked about how much you like Nana. I really like F.A. Demerol. You've talked about him as well. Those guys obviously only had 6 points. I think they combined for like 1 of 14 from the field against New Mexico. But it feels like if there's one weakness for Utah State, it's the front court and kind of the bodies that are coming in and out of there. Obviously, they start a freshman in Adlin Elamine, who it's going to be a tough challenge for him and the other young guys that Utah State plays in going on the road to a place like GCU. Obviously, the GCU Arena is going to be rocking on Saturday afternoon, like you mentioned. How can GCU get FA and Nana involved in this game? And can that kind of be an X factor for this team? If maybe they're able to get some of those guys from Utah State in foul trouble and just kind of put pressure on the interior, because that's not really what is not really Utah's strength is interior defense. It's kind of what they do on the perimeter with guys like Mason Falslev and MJ Collins, who, despite being a good scorer, I think is a guy that guards his tail off on the defensive end as well at times. Like, is that an area inside where GCU can kind of have an advantage and maybe take control of the game early in a rocket environment?
Yeah, when you look at the Utah State, I think it's a good point. When you go on Evan Meyer right now, by the way, the top 3 rated players in the conference are MJ Collins, Mason Falslev, and Drake Allen, and that includes offense and defense. So
there's the entire Utah State perimeter.
It's unbelievable, right? And I think you're right though, because when you look at Templin and Clark, they're your college big guys, right? They're maybe they're listed at 6'9", whatever it is, right? But it's like, whatever.
Really 6'7", 6'8", kind of.
Yeah, and they fight, and that's right. You see a lot of those big guys in college. That's how it works, right? They're great players, so that's not a shot at all. But I think you're
Zach
right.
Keller's like the only like real like near 7-footer guy that they have that he started a decent amount recently, but even still his minutes have kind of been up and down. Like you said, Templin and Clark even come off the bench, and it's kind of depends on what they're doing, how many minutes they get. So it's not the most secure unit on Utah State's roster.
But I think you're spot on. I think one thing with Nana that I've called out, I've said how incredible he's been on the defensive end, but offensively, one thing I've talked about with him is you just kind of look up and you're like, man, he's kind of far from the basket. Like, he's pretty talented. He's crafty. He's a tweener. I talked about,
he's a good rebounder, especially on the offensive end too. Yeah.
You want him as close to the basket as possible. And I think at times, he just kind of slowly makes his way out to the 3-point line, throughout the shot clock. And you want him as close to the basket as possible. So I think that's one thing to keep an eye on with Nana is, can you just get him closer to the basket, down there fighting, scrapping, offensive rebounds, just putting some pressure on him? I think that's a big one with Nana. The other problem for the bigs is it's kind of been a 1 or a 0 with the bigs this year. When the Lopes don't play well, it's bad, and it's bad on both ends. So and it's kind of funny, like when they've had really bad breakdowns, it's really been the big guys. It's FA, getting lost in a pick and roll, and I've talked about this, but FA, the first few games, there's a lot of like pointing and like they're after the foul, right? And they're going to the free throw line and they're pointing and talking, communicating, and it's like, okay, they got to iron those things out. But again, we're mid-January now, and so you've seen the defense and offense seem to go hand in hand, and that's not good. That's a bad sign. Bryce has talked about the physicality, which, listen, I think is obviously like a really good point. Like when FA's physical, he's catching the ball on the block and not catching the ball at 10 feet. Same thing with Nana. Like, he kind of slowly gets nudged out to that 3-point line, makes his way out there. So it's physicality. And I think with GCU, when it's humming, it's defensively. They're dialed, they're physical, their coverages are fantastic. And then it leads to really good offense and guys are in the flow. But yeah, I mean, it's been a struggle because you kind of know what you're getting like 5 minutes in. You can kind of look over and like, it's not really going to change throughout the game. Like, you're getting them or you're not. And so it's really tough when that happens. And then the other problem has been fouls. Like they've had problems with fouls throughout the season, usually one big guy. Wilhelm, obviously, he fouls a ton. And so what happens then is like FA comes out for his usual substitution, right? Wilhelm comes in and you're trying to get these rotations and get the flow of stuff. And Wilhelm picks up 2 fouls in 5 minutes. And it's like, okay, well, now he's got to come out. Now you're having to be reactive. FA's struggled with fouls as well. So I think that's been a big, kind of contributor to it, is just the rhythm is not there with these guys and the rotations have been off. So when it gets off the kind of off the tracks, it's been really tough for those bigs to get back on the tracks, and you kind of know what you're getting a few minutes in. So we'll see what that looks like. You'd hope you're at home. Like you said, there's not a ton of like skilled size, but I'll tell you what, those guys, they'll fight. Like, I mean, Temple, and you watch his screens. We
He's
talk
one of
how
the
he's
toughest
maybe
dudes
not
in the
big.
conference.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
it's like, I don't know. Him and Nana might. That's going to be a really good battle if they end up, on each other. So I do think it's going to be, a really tough battle down there. But you're right; they got to take advantage of it against San Jose State. Obviously, the Spartans are dealing a ton of injuries and don't have a ton of size. They've had some games even against good teams where they haven't had to do anything crazy. Like they just get FA underneath the basket, seals, and he's deep enough. They get the ball into him, and he can.
He's a really skilled player. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you just got to find some informal offense. FA can also get out and run a little bit. So I think that's also on the guards to have their heads up and not kind of be looking for their own. And if they can get a little something in transition, FA just stare at the rim, just stare at it and just run, and then look for the ball once you get to kind of the free throw line area. So I think just some more informal offense and kind of getting in that rhythm. And then it seems to translate defensively. I don't know which one's causing the other one, but I feel like when it's not going well, the defense, everyone's pointing at each other, trying to figure it out. Obviously, the Lobos, I mean, they were kind of getting whatever they wanted. There was some pick and pop action, some big guys coming off the bench hitting threes. Obviously, you had Jay Call, whatever they threw at him didn't work. So Uriah Tenet putting guys in pick and rolls, and he was hitting jumpers. So yeah, they got to clean some of that stuff up. And like I said, you got to be on your P's and Q's, because one, bad 3 to 4 minute stretch. And Utah State, they're just going to be ready to go. So, and I think, that's credit to Utah State. And I mentioned that I think with them at the start of the season, like it's ironic to say Utah State was coming into this season with the most reliable kind of core, right? Considering their last few years, right? Of just coaches in and out. They've had a ton of success, but I think that was one of the things they had really going for them this year is these guys were ready to go out of the gate, and you can tell what a difference that makes. They're not figuring each other out. They're not, who's going to be where or who wants to do this. Like they know who they are, and they knew who they are at the start of the season. And I think that's led to them just being in a rhythm. And obviously, it helps when MJ Collins, is an absolute flamethrower. So.
What's the biggest key defensively for GCU? Because obviously this has been a really solid defensive team. Like you said, when it's going well for the Lopes, like it's the defense first and kind of getting out and running, and that just kind of translates into offense. And this is going to be the biggest test yet for this GCU defense, which is, I think it's 35th in KenPom right now. Like it's one of the several very good defenses that the Mountain West has. But Utah State, I think in 4 of the first 6 Mountain West games have scored 93 or more. And the other 2, they've scored 70 plus. So like this is the number 1 offense in the conference right now for a reason. I think they're ahead of Colorado State now, even offensively. But this is going to be a really, really tough test for GCU. And it's going to have to come on the perimeter, like you said, because MJ Collins is the leading scorer in the Mountain West, the only 20-point scorer in the conference. Like who's going to take that assignment and kind of run with it? Because I feel like that is exactly what Bryce Drew is probably going to be looking for in this game, is someone to step up and say, hey, MJ Collins isn't getting his usual 20 tonight. Or if he is, we're going to make him take 20, 25 shots to get there. Like, how do you do that? And then try to stop the Mason Falls sleds. Drake Allen, who's been a good catch and shoot guy this year. And the guys coming off the bench, like you said, Gary Clark is one of those guys, big guys that comes off the bench and makes an impact. They've got some young guys too. Like, how does GCU be at their best defensively and have that translate into what they want to do offensively?
Yeah, you're spot on. You watched the Nevada game last night. They clearly, all they wanted to do is just not have MJ Collins go bonkers on him, right? Which they're like, yes, we did it. And then it's like, oh yeah, well, what about Mason Falstaff for you? So it is a balance. And I think that's what makes them so tough is pretty much they're going to have every lineup. They're going to have 4 or 5 guys. They really don't have guys that aren't capable of scoring or doing something, right? I think even in the Mountain West, every now and again, you have a guy you can kind of like, okay, we don't have to worry a ton about that. But this Utah State team, they got options, and I think that's what makes them really tough. So this GCU team, when they defend well, they are just really tough on the perimeter. And it's kind of just, hey, do you have the guts to kind of get in guys and not get blown by, be physical, wear guys down? So I think the best version of this GCU defense plays really well against this Utah State offense. That's, guard heavy, creating things. They got multiple options. But the problem that you get into is if you're not dialed, if you're playing catch up, it's over. that you stop one guy or you overcommit somewhere, someone's going to be open. And that's the problem. I was watching a bunch of highlights from Falsev, and they, just to explain, like one of the actions that's so common, he's off ball. He comes off that Templin screen and he gets the ball downhill, and his goal is to get this defender on his back. Right. I
know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. They run it so much.
Line.
Yeah.
Oh my God. He comes off it every single time, and you're left. It's just, everyone has to make a decision, right? All 5 defenders have to make a decision. All they want is a defender on the back, because then they're good, because guess who's sitting in the corner is MJ Collins. You got Templin rolling to the basket. So I think what this is going to just require is a ton of physicality. The old Tony Allen, when people say, he's like, I don't know what a screen is. Never met one. So I don't know anything about screens. I never got screened in my whole career, whatever his quote was. It was hilarious. Obviously, you're going to still get screened because there's a ton of motion in this Utah State offense, but you got to be physical. And if you're going to be pretty scared of screens, like, it's going to be a long night for you. So you got to be physical and fight through screens and work your butt off there. And then it is communication, because, like I said, they're looking to get some 2-on-1s. They're looking to get guys downhill and get you in between. They've got multiple guys who can roll to the rim who are really good, some pick and pop action. And then obviously what really kills you, like I said, is when Falsev gets going downhill, specifically just on that action, he's so good at making decisions. And just, he's not in a rush. He's not overly selfish. He's not overly passive as well, like a traditional point guard that
he just kind of takes whatever's there.
Yeah, and he's super comfortable with. I mean, you can look at what he did against Nevada. Like, okay, this is a Falsev game. Let's go. Like, what did he have last night? 28,
26.
29, whatever, 26. Yeah,
season high. Yeah.
And his feel for the game is incredible. Another thing with Falsev that I talked about on my podcast is just like, he's a program guy, a capital P program guy, and to have MJ Collins come in and for him to be so comfortable, I guess kind of giving up some of that spotlight and giving Collins all this kind of, I mean, not that he's giving him a ton of attention, right? But that it's like, hey, man, maybe that he was thinking this is going to be his team. He wanted Mountain West Player of the Year, and he seems so comfortable in his role. And I think that tells you a lot about why it works on the court. And you just, man, their goal is to get that ball in Falsev's hands. And then the thing with Collins that's such a problem when I watch him is he's so in control of his body as a shooter. He's not, his body's not kind of everywhere. Like, he has such a solid foundation.
He never needs a ton of space to get a shot off either.
Doesn't need space. He's not in a rush. He's not forcing it. And I think that's what makes him so special, is just the control he has of his body, the amount that he does move and he makes himself so available, and he's not panicked when he has the ball. And I think that's a good sign of a shooter. It probably is why he's been so confident this year. It's just good looks, but also, he's confident, he's centered, he's got his feet underneath him. And it helps when you've got a bunch of playmakers around you, but I truly don't know who's going to guard who. And I think what I came to on my podcast, honestly, I just said, like, it's an all 5 guys effort when you're on the court. And it sounds cliche and it sounds really dumb, but it's like, it's not going to be one guy giving a really good defensive performance, because maybe that's what I watched a little bit of the Nevada game. I don't know if it was 1-on-1 or whatever it was for MJ Collins, but
it was pretty much a team effort by Nevada. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to have a team effort, but even if you take one guy out, that's not good enough sometimes to beat this Utah State team. So it's going to have to be all 5 guys. And when guys off the bench come in, you're not getting a waiting period to be ready. Like, you gotta be ready the second you walk on that floor. And I think it's going to be a tough ask when you look at a guy like Wilhelm, who comes in for FA. Like, obviously Nana, you trust in those situations. Henley, being aware of the situation, but they're going to have some guys in there. Like, you've got to be ready to go, and there cannot be a drop off in the way they go about it. And then the final step, which a lot of people obviously don't talk about with defense, the freaking offensive rebounding from Utah
finishing
State.
the possession.
Why the heck are they top 30 in that? Like, I mean, you shoot 3 at the rate you do, you shoot the 2s at the way you do, you get to the rim, all that, and you're going to be a top 30 offensive rebounding team. So you better get your butts down there and you better rebound, because you give them extra possessions, they're way too efficient, way too talented. And I think that's a big problem too. Like, if you're MJ Collins, nothing is better than a rebound coming off to a big guy. Everyone's scattered around on GCU, and you're just sitting there licking your chops wide open because the defense doesn't know what's going on because Utah State got an offensive rebound. So you got to finish possessions, and rebound cannot give them extra chances.
It's going to be a really fascinating game. I think both coaching staffs are. I really trust both coaching staffs to have a good game plan in place. Now, so obviously about the players executing on the floor, but that game I'm really looking forward to. Like I said, 12:30 p.m. on FS1 on Saturday. Should be a good environment, Brandon. I'm sure you'll be there for that game.
Absolutely.
It's a chance for GCU to make a statement too. I think I said on Twitter after the Boise State game that was kind of a statement win for Utah State, obviously, or for GCU in their first year in the Mountain West. Picking up a road win like that, obviously that hasn't aged as well. But this is a real statement. No matter how you do it, how you get it done, if you're able to take down a nationally ranked opponent in Utah State, who I said the other day on the episode that we did earlier this week that I think Utah State's in a tier of its own right now in the Mountain West, and I'm not going to pick anybody to beat them until I see it. But I think GCU's got as good of a shot as anybody with the talent they've got, the defense potential they've got, and the environment that is going to be rocking on Saturday as well. But before I get you out of here, Brendan, there's one other big game in the Mountain West this week. I want to get your take on New Mexico at San Diego State on Saturday night, 6 o'clock, CBS Sports Network, Viejas Arena. These are right now second and third right now in the Mountain West in terms of standings. San Diego State's the only other unbeaten team. New Mexico obviously is 5-1. What are you expecting out of this game? Just like how important or impactful can this one be in terms of what we think of both these squads and the Mountain West as a whole with how good both these teams have been the last two weeks or so?
One quick final thought on GCU. I saw this tweet. This was a quote from the Vanderbilt head coach, Mark Byington. He said on the postgame that last year, teams that had to play a late tip-off Wednesday night and then play an early game on Saturday went 1-8 in Saturday games. So just a quick note there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not nothing. I know, obviously.
And the second game on the road, too, that makes you got to travel as well.
So, final little food for thought there to keep in mind. But yeah, I mean, that Saturday nightcapper is, I mean, it's really good. And I think that's one thing with GCU you could point at and say, those three teams kind of seem to be lifting and separating. And the common theme is like really good coaches, really good environments.
Yeah.
Obviously a ton of talent, but those are tough places to play. And GCU's only played one of them so far. And I think those are kind of the big bosses. I agree, Utah State in a league of their own, but man, New Mexico, San Diego State. I think the thing that with San Diego State, they had such high expectations coming in. Miles Byrd has all these expectations, and it hasn't been a great season for, Miles Byrd individually.
Really anybody individually on there.
Yeah.
They had a weird non-conference, and now they're kind of picking it up in Mountain West play. But yeah, you meant Magoon Guath as well. Multiple, projected NBA draft picks, has been a weird start for Guath's coming off the bench, but they're starting to figure it out as a team, which is no surprise for a Brian Dutcher squad, at least.
Well, I think that's kind of the point, right? Guath was doghoused, I think, for 1.5 games earlier this season, it seemed like. And you kind of put your head up when you're like, oh no, now they're 5-0 in the Mountain West. It's like, okay, and things, quote, weren't maybe ironed out or going great. And yeah, credit to Brian Dutcher, I think, like you said there. And they've had other guys step up. And I think it's interesting to see. We talked about Mountain West Media Days with Dutcher. This was one of the questions, like, hey, you kind of got a lot of options, like player-wise. Like, how are you going to figure this out? And he said, I'm not going to figure it out. They're going to figure it out. Like, they'll figure it out. We got true freshmen, up to guys who are allegedly, like Guath would have been a top 3 portal guy, allegedly, right? Everyone was offering
Kentucky
him
was all over him.
Yeah, people. So, it's funny to look back a little bit and look at their roster and say what you were expecting. And they've had other guys step up. It's been a, kind of a group effort over there for San Diego State. And I think you're spot on, like credit to Dutch, his kind of confidence. And the Boise State game earlier this season was kind of a testament to everything I feel like he is and what he's kind of turned that program into, right? Like they're up. Okay. Oh my gosh. Are they going to lose? Boise State comes back, double OT. He doesn't waver. I believe Guath stayed on the bench that whole game, the second half and the OTs. He didn't put him back in, and he's relying on freshmen, and they got it done. And I think that's just a credit to Dutcher. So you look at that San Diego State team, and to me, they're scary. Like the fact that you haven't seen the best of them, I don't think yet. They haven't had individually guys play up to maybe what they can, and that they're still 5-0. Dutcher's still there. It's still a really tough place to play. And, they just have a high standard, I think makes the game on Saturday tough. And again, you're just seeing it clash with this New Mexico team. That's just this incredible group and unit that seems to just, they can pick up their operation and seem to drop it wherever. And again, they're getting the same shots. A little bit of a homecoming for Jake Hall out there from Carlsbad. I'd be interested to see, is he going to be a little anxious with that?
Everyone in San Diego knows who Eric Olin is too, with what he did at UC San Diego last year. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think there's a few really good storylines there, and something's going to have to give. Like, we're going to get a little bit more of an idea with New Mexico. I think, like, are they really good? Can they take this thing on the road? And then if you're San Diego State, can you continue to sustain this? And can some of those individual players start to flash a little bit and start to really move this thing forward? And that's just the Mountain West right now. It's insane. I mean, there's so many storylines night to night. It feels like everything changes constantly. It's very fluid, and we're going to learn a lot, I think, after that game. And, if New Mexico can take their operation into any environment, and if they can, it's pretty terrifying, because it's a pretty dang good operation. And, if these freshmen are going to continue acting like 6-year seniors, I mean, who knows what their ceiling is. And then we're going to see, is some of that rotation stuff, it's kind of the thing I'm monitoring with San Diego State. Is some of that going to figure itself out and become even more clear? Because I get the whole playing 10, 11 guys, and we're going to find the 6 or 7 that want to play tonight. But you do have to kind of define that stuff as we get closer down the stretch here. So I'm interested to see how some of that shakes out. I don't know. What's your quick thoughts when you just look at it?
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. I think we're going to learn a lot about both these teams in the game, and I think this is the toughest test yet for New Mexico. Like, they came to Moby in Fort Collins in a really tough environment. Not as tough as it would have been if students were in session, not as big of a crowd as maybe it would have been had it been later in January or in February or something like that. But I was really impressed by seeing them in person. And like you said, it's a really, really good operation that Olin's running, and getting so much out of the freshmen. I really think we're going to learn a lot if they're able to go to Viejas and win a game this Saturday. And it'll be a chance for San Diego State to kind of make a little bit of a statement too. Like you said, they had that wild game against Boise last week, and they've had a little bit of an easier schedule to start Mountain West play, but this is going to be a real, if they can hold off New Mexico and even have a dominant win, I think that'll say a lot about the way they're trending as well. So it's like the game that they'll kick off the slate on Saturday at GCU Arena, and the one at Viejas to kick off to end the slate on Saturday. I think both those games are going to learn a lot. Yeah.
One thing to call out there, and I hate doing the look ahead here, because I mean, we can, right? The teams obviously aren't, but turn around if you're San Diego State. Yeah, you got a late one Saturday. You're coming to GCU Arena next Wednesday. Yep. And I think it's a total turn the page thing, but GCU's played really good against San Diego State. I don't know what the heck it is over the last 10, 15 years. Yeah. They kind of have had their number. And so I think that's an interesting game too, where, you got New Mexico at home, and then you go to GCU Arena, and then, then you start going down the GCU lane. Like, holy smokes, what a 3-game stretch here. Going 0-3 doesn't feel like a disaster, but you got to show, I think, a little bit of something, somewhere in these next 2 games at home if you're GCU, because, it is a long conference season, a lot of games to win there. But, I think we're starting to see some tiers in the Mountain West and some teams kind of elevate. I think we're seeing some coaches too, like really kind of flex their muscles a little bit. We talked about Dutch Calhoun at Mountain West Media Day. I know you've probably spent more time around him, but just the confidence, the calmness. He's not,
he's a great basketball mind. I love talking to him every time.
Yeah, and he's not there like looking to put on any sort of show. He's not rude. He's so, I
just likes to talk ball. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was, it's like, that's my first media day. I was like, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. He just sat there and talked with me for 4 minutes. No one else was there. They were first available to general media, he sipping a cup of coffee. And so, yeah, I think you're seeing some coaches really flex their muscles, and there's so many good storylines. Nevada lingering, are they for real? Can they kind of get things back on track after last season? Colorado State, obviously some stuff going on over there. So I don't know. We'll see. So many storylines. And this is, I think if you're a GCU fan, this is where you want to be. Like when you look at this season, I get, it's fun, beating up on these WAC teams and getting 20 plus wins every year, trying to get 25 wins, whatever it might be. But like, this is what it's about. It's about, hosting Utah State, a ton of talent, a really good coach, a great program on linear TV, 12:30. I mean, in Phoenix, we're looking, I think, at like 75 and sunny on Saturday. This is what it's about. And I'm really amped.
All right, Brennan. I'm excited for it too. I wish I could be at the game in person on Saturday, but I'll be watching in the Broncos press box before that game kicks off against the
Stay
Bills.
warm.
Yeah, definitely will. It's actually going to be. It's been warm most of the week here. We've had a very mild winter in Denver, but it's supposed to cool off a little bit this weekend. So maybe it'll be. I think it'll be in the 30s on Saturday. So I'll be definitely be trying to stay as warm as possible while watching that, being jealous of the 75 degrees you got down there in Phoenix. But I appreciate you hopping on as always. Have a good one, man. You got anything you want to plug quick?
Yeah, I mean, follow me, guys, at Go Lopes Radio. I'm on Substack. We've got the YouTube rolling, and I'm really, really excited for what this season's kind of. I did some preview for New Mexico. New Mexico fans were awesome. They were listening to the content, supporting. They were fantastic. So really appreciated them, and I'm just excited for the rest of the season. And before we know it, it's like we're looking at hotels for Vegas. It's like. So, it's that time of the year. I love it. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
As always, man. Well, happy to have you back on some point later in the season as well. So that'll do it for today's episode of Basketball in the Mountains. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen, and make sure to subscribe to Brendan's podcast as well, Go Lopes Radio. Like you said, follow him over on X, subscribe to his Substack and his YouTube channel as well, and subscribe to this podcast, Basketball in the Mountains, wherever you get your podcasts, but mostly Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube as well. You can follow my YouTube channel. All the episodes get posted in full over there. So thanks again to Brennan Williams from Go Lopes Radio for hopping on today's episode, Talk Mountain West Hoops, and all the great games you got on the docket this weekend. And thanks to all of you for listening, and enjoy the weekend of basketball.